Welcome to the Trailer Park Podcast. This is episode 8, and I have ArTorr. Or how do you? So how do you? I saw that you have a few different, your parks on Twitter, ArTorr on YouTube,
Hmm.
SciTorr on Twitch. Um,
Yes.
so I guess could you introduce yourself and then kind of explain where the name, like the naming scheme, comes from?
Yeah, for sure. Well, of course, my name is Parks. That's my real name. I like to think all three of them are weird. Not many people know someone who's named Parks, but yeah. I run a YouTube channel called ArTorr. I make sort of, I guess you'd call them video essays or video docs on a variety of movies, games, and TV shows, spanning from like Star Wars, to The Last of Us, to Cyberpunk, to uh, classic movies like Indiana Jones. Um, I started on YouTube as a channel called SciTour, and that was like a more of like a gameplay channel, strictly like a video game playthrough, walkthrough, let's play channel. But started ArTorr a few years ago. So on Twitch, I'm still known as SciTour. When I wanted to make a new channel, I changed the name slightly to ArTorr.
Mm.
And frankly, you can call me any three of those. Most people call me ArTorr, and people who know me well call me Parks. So
Okay.
whatever's comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds good. I Your channel to me is kind of like a fresh air in a way of there aren't many people making these style of I feel like the craze, or not even the craze, it's just the way people present either sci-fi media or video game
Mm-hmm.
like video essays is normally shorter form, way more like comedic bits and everything, like heavy editing and stuff like that. It's like
Yeah.
it's very common practice, and it's because it's viewer retention. People like jokes and everything, but I like
For
your
sure.
presentation because you're taking sort of the more documentary kind of angle at it. And would you say you've taken like have you cultivated like any of your style from documentaries, or did you take it from other YouTubers, or is it kind of a mix of both?
I would say, where that comes from, I will say I come from a sort of a similar sort of like, I mean, for me, a lot of it is like almost either like a dissatisfaction or a frustration with a lot of sort of the channels you've described that are like, the short length isn't necessarily something that I had ever had any problem with, but it was more so like you said, the comedic bits and sort of, not that every video needs to be serious, but I felt like a lot of these videos, when I'd go on YouTube and I'd like make ramen noodles for lunch and I'd sit down, I'd watch a video essay and I'd look through recommended for it. Most of like what I could watch, like, from I won't name any channels, but just a couple different channels were sort of like again what you described. And ultimately, like when I think of the stories that I love, like the movies, the games, the shows that I really enjoy that have a personal, like intrinsic meaning to me, it was hard to find any channels that really, really like truly touched upon and deciphered the meaning from those things, other
Hmm.
than just sort of regurgitating sort of what the common sentiment about, say, like a Marvel movie that just came out was, or sort of what everyone thought about the latest Star Wars thing, or like at some point it just feels like I'm not really getting anything new.
Hmm.
So our tour was sort of, you know me being like, I want to make the videos that I want to see. Like I want to make the videos that I want to, when I sit down and at lunch, at work or whatever, I can just turn this on and have a good time with it. And I'd say like the channels that probably inspired me the most, and to touch on the documentary comment, that is not something that inspired me in the beginning or something that I drew my style from in the beginning. But as time has gone on, like people have sort of, I've gotten comments, like especially on my Clone Wars videos, people were like, "Oh man, like this is such a great doc, like on the show," and I'm like, "Documentary? What do you mean?" And I didn't even think about like, like I guess there are sort of similarities there. And so as time has gone on, I've sort of watched like more documentaries to pick up sort of stylistic aspects. But if there is anything that I've drawn from, it's sort of more the long form critique channels like um I'd say like if you've ever seen the channel like Stories of Old, another great channel is Joseph Anderson,
I was gonna
who
say,
does like
yep,
yeah,
he's probably. I think I found him. I think I found you off of like a recommended video of his.
that's fulfillment for me because I love Joseph
Yeah.
Anderson. Still waiting for his Witcher 3 video.
Oh god.
Um,
Yeah, 7 hours.
yes,
It's like
absolutely.
yeah. I
Make
remember
it longer.
he posted like a because I think he's in like the final editing process, and he was like, guess how long it
Yeah.
is. He didn't even put the correct answer on the poll because it was like actually I think it was like almost 10 hours or something
Yeah,
stupid.
it was pretty long.
Yeah.
I never want to make a video that long.
No.
I hope,
Yeah.
hopefully not. But, and not there's anything wrong with that either. Because the amazing thing about Joseph Anderson is just like you sit there, you watch a 4 hour video. At least I think of like the Witcher videos he's done so far. Like every minute of that is extremely thorough, and that is
Hmm.
just like that's god level YouTubing there. I don't know like how he does it, but
Yeah. Because it's there's such a like a ebb and like you get into the mindset like at least this is kind of where I'm
yeah,
at this point is like I see these like longer form videos and it's something I want to do, but I feel like long form is a more difficult thing to like cultivate when you aren't doing it in like a bulk of your time. So like if you have a
yeah,
job essentially, like I feel like
yeah,
it it's so like you just gravitate towards like shorter form content, and
yeah.
I think that's what makes people's styles a lot of the time these shorter videos.
Hmm.
But I do really appreciate when I see people making long form content while they might not necessarily do YouTube full time or anything like that, because I think that takes a lot of like control. uh
Yeah.
because I mean, I'm working on a like a long form video on like Knights of the Old Republic, and
Mm.
it's just impossible, I feel like, at times, because I'll write part of it and then work on some other stuff because I'm like, I don't want to I don't want this thing, which I know even if I worked on it solely wouldn't come out for like a year. I want to try to put out other
Yeah.
things, and then I come back to it and I'm like, oh, this is dog shit. And then I just rewrite most of it. It's like
Endless cycle.
yeah.
Yeah.
And my question off of that is like, do you have those kind of moments, and have you done anything to kind of curb that either the mindset or like the trend of constantly revising while working on something, especially if you put it down?
I mean, short answer, yes. Long answer, I would sum up like sort of the experience with making videos on ArTorr as like the really popular meme where it's the boyfriend and the girlfriend. The dude is like looking behind him at the girl
Yeah.
walking by, and the girl's like, "What the heck?" Um, I'm the dude. The girl next to me is the video I'm currently working on. The video walking past me is the
Oh,
video I want to work on next. And I'm like,
that yeah.
I got to finish this one first, though, So, and man, I was going at a pretty decent rate like in 2020. And that was before my channel really had like any of the attention it has now. I was just kind of making videos because I wanted to make them. I was going at a pretty decent rate that year, putting out a video like maybe every month or every 2 months. But last year, I was only able to put out 4 videos, and that was like working the whole time, like
Mhm.
around, like you said, like a job and a couple different like moving apartments a few times.
Mhm.
So that was kind of difficult. I've gotten a lot better at it recently because of like all the trouble I had last year, where I sort of have it down to a process and like um down to a like I've gotten very good at understanding like the economy of like the various parts of time, like how long it takes to make certain parts of the video.
Mhm.
So if I know that it'll take me, because I just worked on a video for Mass Effect 2, if I
Mhm.
know that it'll take me 40 hours to get through a Paragon playthrough and 40 hours to do a Renegade playthrough, and if I'm doing that like every spare hour of the week, then it'd probably take me a week and a half to get through the Paragon one, a week and a half to get through the Renegade one. So that's 3 weeks. I can already block out 3 weeks for that.
Mhm.
Um, then I also know that generally, like, the script can vary like that.
Oh
I've
yeah.
written a script over the span of 2 weeks before, or I should let me set this up better. One of the longest videos I've done on my channel took me 2 weeks to write. Another one of the longest videos on my channel, about comparable length, took me 2 months to write. So it like, and even then, I think some people would be like, "Well, that's pretty good." But for me, I'm like, I want to get what's in here out on the
Uh
page as quickly as possible.
yeah, that
Um,
is the worst feeling in the world. It's like, and
yeah,
like the meme that you mentioned, like that's how I feel like 99% of the time, because I'm like working
yeah,
on one thing and then I think of a better idea, and then this old idea
yeah,
comes back up and I'm like, oh shit.
absolutely.
Like just
Yeah.
absolutely chaos.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and so at some point, like, I sort of then leave like a range of time for myself. Like, realistically, like, I don't want to spend 2 months working on this, so let me give myself a month. Let me see what I can come up with in a month. That might encourage me to make the video shorter than I originally intended. That might encourage me to maybe just get through the first draft as quickly as possible, which isn't always a bad thing. That's, and in some cases that's probably like the ideal sort of thing to do, because then you can go back and touch it up on
Revise,
subsequent
yeah.
drafts. And then editing, for an hour long video almost consistently takes me about 3 weeks to a month.
Yep.
So once I've broken it down like that, I understand, like, okay, like, this is how long it takes me. And then the thing I'm starting to do now, which should hopefully not burn me out and hopefully lead to more videos, is I'm starting to overlap sort of the time, the sort of, I'd say, like, the pipeline of the current video I'm working on with the next video. So about halfway through the current video, I'm starting work on the video after that, and I've
Mm.
scheduled it as such. So um, I've gotten pretty good at that, I'd like to think. But again, yeah, like, the hardest thing, the thing that I can never account for, is that very thing you said, like, of when you're sitting there writing it or working on it and you come back to it later and you're like, oh man, this isn't good anymore. And I do get discouraged, and I do, like, beat myself down a lot along the way. And there are times where, like, and it's just part of making stuff, like making art, really.
Hmm.
um After you spend so much time with something, you sort of lose perspective on it. You no longer understand what made it good to you when you first thought of it. Like, you just completely, so at that point, it's really just a matter of trusting yourself, and a matter of just having faith that in the thing you originally intended. And I'd say,
Hmm.
like, 9 times out of 10 for me, that's paid off. Because when I put it out, it is that thing to others what it was to me when I first thought of it.
Hmm.
Um, but you know, it's maybe I make it look easy, or even then, like I said, like, I struggle with it all the time. And there have been definitely multiple videos in just the last few years where I started it, I got pretty far through it, and then I was like, no, I can't. I'm not ready for this, or I'm not. None of things coming out right, or whatever I wanted to, like, express is not coming through. So,
Hmm.
yeah, it's a battle, in short.
Oh yeah, and I think it's like one of the more major pitfalls that like new creators fall into is like the constant revision phase, or the like,
Yeah.
or you think you have to make it big and grand and everything, or it has
Yeah.
to be good. Like you can just, I've gotten to the point where like I've like completely scrapped videos I've completely edited, but
Oh yeah.
I haven't done that anytime recently because I'm like, you can release a video even if it's kind of bad,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you should hopefully get some amount of feedback. If you
Mhm.
like, the problem is also early on, getting people to watch your videos is hard. So it's
Yes.
like
Yeah.
this it's like, I mean, probably I have like, I don't have a whole lot of videos out, and I haven't like, and my topics jump around a lot, and
Oh
like
yeah.
my most popular video is just like this random video. I saw something on like TikTok and it made me want to talk about it. I talked about it, and then it's like has like triple the views of everything else I have. And it's like 5 minutes. And it's just like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's completely off
It's a
topic
little
from anything
defeating.
else. Yeah, it's like,
Hmm.
wow, I got on camera and complained about something I don't usually talk about, and it did better than anything else. Um, it's so,
Yeah. That's
and
YouTube.
yeah, you too. And just trying to figure out I despise the aspect of YouTube where you have to stay in a lane almost to grow,
Hmm.
where it's like, you know, I'm a very jump around person when it comes to like what I'm interested in. So it's like I'm working on this long form code tour video. I have like a very random like short form video I want to do, and then I have like a Pokemon Nuzlocke video that I'm making right now, which is almost done,
Yeah.
thankfully. It's just like I
Yeah.
feel like I'm going to get genuinely and like I do a lot of fitness content stuff because it's something,
Sure.
especially during the pandemic, I fell into and like researched a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
it feels it's like wow, I'm really going to confuse like YouTube slash anyone who is subscribed to me because I'm putting out all these random videos on just different things. And
Yeah.
YouTube also will just look at that and be like, oh, you have no like rhyme or reason,
The
and
algorithm.
the algorithm is
Yeah.
going to do you no good.
The algorithm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and most of the people who have subbed to me are subbed from the one random video that did well. So it's just this. I always get on this topic if I talk to people who make content on YouTube because the
Yeah.
algorithm is such a genuinely confusing and frustrating thing.
It is, yeah. Yeah, it's hard. And I'll say like I relate with your frustration very deeply because of what I went through with my previous channel. My previous channels I mentioned earlier, ArTorr, gameplay let's play channel, still up on YouTube. You can still watch most of the videos. I encourage you don't because I made most of them while I was in high school.
Yeah.
But regardless, like for a long time, there were several like sort of shifts that I took with the channel over the years. Where when I started it, I was like really into like the gameplay thing, but as time went on, like I wanted to do other things, and the like the part about that sort of bit me in the ass was that um I built an audience off of this type of content, and it was an audience. It wasn't like the most loyal audience in the world, but it was an
Mhm.
audience and they watched that. And I had a regular viewership from that. Once I went away from that, once I started doing other things, I could no longer rely on that audience to tune in because they were not getting in their sub box what they subscribed for. And I can't begrudge them that. That's just how it is.
Mhm.
The problem on my end is I have to figure out how to get their interest in it. And hopefully, the principal hope for any YouTuber at that point is if they are invested enough in my personality, they will tune into that content. But the real make or break moment a lot of the time is when you start you go away from the thing that they subscribe for. And then a thing I found out with my channel was, oh, like people are not that interested in what I have to say or this topic.
Mhm.
And so that like over time, eventually I went back to Let's Play stuff, but I didn't get any of the same views anymore. And it's an interesting thing, like the psychology of trying to maintain an audience on a platform like YouTube, that you start to realize over time. And I almost just completely quit YouTube at one point because it was like, like I don't know what to do anymore. Like I put something out, nobody watches it. And what it really took for me eventually was, you know, to realize that I can't, it's such a cliche thing, but I can't do this for the views. If I
Mhm.
want to make something, I have to make something that just the very process of making it will be enough,
Mhm.
like so I spent a whole year on ArTorr before I even had like 200 subscribers, just slowly making videos that I really wanted to see. And I already talked about all this, but
Mhm.
um, yeah, and that was like, and so when I did get an audience, it was like this is a bonus. And now it's way more than just a bonus, but um, and I can say in that regard, I'm very lucky because um, I do have a type of content I think that is similar across all videos, but all of them are on different sort of topics. And you know I put out stuff like the Mass Effect 1 video last year, and that did not do super well, but then I put out the Mass Effect 2 video just a month ago, and that did much better.
Mhm.
So the algorithm is a fickle force, if you will, and
Yep.
hard to get around. And my heart goes out to every sort of like smaller channel or creator because believe me, I have been there. Um, so it's tough, and the best thing I can say is just like just keep making stuff, have faith in yourself, and a bunch of other platitudes that don't make you go, but wait, how do I get views though? And it's
Yeah,
like,
it's like
I don't know, like it's
sell me
half
the
luck, half
course.
hard work.
Yeah, it's like sell me the
Exactly.
course. Sell me where do I buy the followers? No,
Yeah, yeah.
I think that same sort of realization I'd say I had like towards the beginning of this year of like
Hmm.
it just because I felt like because I kind of stopped making stuff. I like got back into streaming again, but it's like finding a
Yeah.
balance between um doing like different forms of content because like people try to make streaming sound like just this super easy thing, and it's like the process of it is like consistent. Like YouTube is about consistency, but Twitch is about like insane consistency because of how
Yes.
bad the like the SEO stuff and everything behind Twitch is,
Hmm.
uh,
Yeah.
which is just like I I'm almost it's like you kind of have to play the ball of like I like streaming, but it might be better to focus on YouTube for now, and then streaming can be a more lucrative thing in the future. It's like you
Yeah.
might it's just like I like streaming, but also when I'm 50% of streams or two people or something, it's like mo-
Yeah.
I'd rather put creative more. It's like you can be creative with a Twitch stream, but
Mm.
being creative with a Twitch stream at two viewers doesn't mean shit.
Yes.
Where being
Yeah.
creative with a YouTube video could mean the world if you do it well enough and the algorithm like clicks.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah, and I'll say like, whereas with YouTube, like for me, like I could not have an audience. Easy for me to say, of course. I could not
Yeah.
have an audience and be happy with what I was making still, but genuinely, because I was for a long time. Um, with Twitch, the very hard thing about that, is like when I'm there, like, you know, the only difference in my mind between when I'm just playing a game normally, say I'm talking to my friends on Discord or whatever, and when I'm streaming is when I'm streaming, I'm doing it for an audience. And if
Hmm.
there's no audience there, or at least I can't share what I'm doing with an audience, it becomes a very like empty experience. And
Yeah.
it's it's very defeating because I don't know, like Twitch is a nut I've not been able to crack for myself yet. um in terms of like how to get people's attention, and I have thought about different things before, like, oh, what if I have like a cool, like, what if I have a cool layout, or what if I have some sort of like soundboard, but there's only so much you can do on Twitch.
Yeah.
That Yeah,
Actually
it's
pulls
it's
people
hard.
in. I think there's a little bit of a because Twitch is such a it's a you have to make a bit more of like a performance out of just video gaming because if you're
Yeah.
just sitting unless you're like godlike at whatever game you're doing or you're speed running, it's like I think like the best I ever did on Twitch was when I was speed running, like, and I
Hmm.
wasn't even like crazy entertaining, but I got decent at the game I was speed running, so people
Yeah.
would tune in at times. So it's just like
Yeah.
there's like levels to it. It's like if you're pretty good and you're pretty entertaining, like I think that can balance out, or you can be
Yeah. Yeah.
one or the other. But if
Hmm.
if you're just like oh, just kind of okay, and then like you're not being over the top, it's just not gonna really work unless you have an audience already.
Of
But
course. Yeah.
and the catch 22 is just like there's you can be as entertaining as you want on Twitch, and but it's like consistency and all these other factors also play in the role, and like just literally being found, and Twitch doesn't
Yeah.
let you be found. Where
Yeah.
like
It's rough.
where YouTube, and this is kind of where I'm just like I feel like, and I like Twitch streaming. I think it's a really cool thing, but YouTube videos are definitely like it's just such this it's the thing I watch most of my day if I'm watching content is on YouTube. I
Same
think
here.
that's the
Yeah.
same for most people who even make videos on YouTube. It's like you're a
Yeah.
part even though it's a massive community, it's like it is a community still.
Yeah.
Um
Absolutely.
and I
Yeah.
think people who make all different kinds of content can appreciate content of all different kinds, and it's because everyone kind of shares this kind of like ambitious sense to create things that'll be on the internet for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, so I did have a question because I did list. So I did listen to the Old Republic podcast a while back when I was doing some
Okay.
writing for my
Shout out to them.
KOTOR video. Yeah,
Yeah.
their podcast is great. Um,
Hmm.
and so in that podcast episode, you mentioned that the Clone Wars was like your Star Wars, and
Yes.
which is a concept that I kind of took, and I was like, that is a really good way of putting it.
Hmm.
And it's something like I'm definitely going to like mention in this video that I ever make because I think it is a perfect explanation of like different tastes in Star Wars
Hmm.
because people have these varying, some people completely shun anything after like the sale to Disney just because of,
Yeah.
Disney or the other aspect of like how Star Wars in the current age is kind of changing how the story's told at least a little bit because of poor reception to the movies. Uh
Yeah.
and
That's definitely a factor.
I think it's like as someone who, you grew up on the Clone Wars TV show, what do you think of like the current state of Star Wars and like how they're directing the series? Even because we both, since we consume a lot of media around Star Wars and we like kind of, I would say, think about this more than some people. It's like there's an
Hmm.
obvious reason why Star Wars is moving towards this kind of the more TV show live action
Yeah.
route. Do you prefer that, or would you like the concept of like the movie still being like the centerpiece, or what's your kind of
Um.
take on it?
Yeah. For me, and I thought a lot about this when I was working on my Clone Wars videos because it's like you said, like without even really thinking about it, I know that the Clone Wars is my Star Wars. Like in the same way, like my parents, like their Star Wars is the first one. It's the one they went to theaters to see. Um, and maybe a generation slightly before me, slightly older than me, the prequels are their Star Wars, and I'd say I was too young, just a little bit too young, and I missed that. But the Clone Wars was, and it's I have such a natural affinity for like what's going on now and like the Star Wars space because like with the Mandalorian and wasn't my favorite thing in the world, but the Book of Boba Fett, I did enjoy the format of that show, and the Bad Batch, which was great, and Rebels,
Mhm.
which is a good show. Um, and to me, this feels like such a natural sort of like evolution for Star Wars to go to the TV medium, and I think a lot of it is because Star Wars is sort of born from, and it was inspired by, um, like a lot of sort of the Action Republic serials of like 30s, 40s 50s, I believe. Anyone who's alive during the 50s, correct me. I'm just kidding. But no, so like you'd have like the sort of walk-in theater with the serials, and each one was like a short thing with a premise. Flash Gordon was one of them, and that was a big
Mm,
inspiration for Star Wars. That's where the opening crawl comes from. And so it sort of it makes like almost too much sense that Star Wars has ended up and has been as successful as it is on TV, and that for George Lucas, sort of like the final sort of thing of his career, at least on the directing filmmaking side of things, was a TV show, an animated TV show, especially interesting because Lucas has always been sort of more than being the filmmaker storyteller that he's known from being from the Star Wars movies. He's always been like a pioneer of like emergent technology and
mhm,
um, yeah, he's made so many groundbreaking sort of achievements for, um, like film industry.
mhm,
And so for me, like I look at that and I look at Mandalorian, Boba Fett, Bad Batch, Rebels, and I go, yeah, like Clone Wars is the blueprint. Like it's right there. Like
mhm,
um, that was sort of a testament to what can work, and you can certainly use that. You certainly use Disney Plus or like the televised sort of medium to be like, here's the sequel trilogy, but told as like a show. And it probably wouldn't be as good because it's like the story has to be good.
Yeah.
That's not a uh, slight knock on the sequel trilogy. I enjoy all Star Wars. I enjoy those movies more than most people do. But like,
Yeah,
to
it's
me that doesn't hold a candle to yeah.
yeah, I am in
That's
the
opening up a whole
same
can of
boat.
worms.
Yeah, oh yeah, the talk mentioning the sequel trilogy is just like a bomb went off like
Yeah,
uh
yeah, for sure.
but
Um,
when you
but yeah,
talk
I
oh sorry.
let me just I'll sorry
Yeah,
quickly
you're
finish
good.
my
No, you're
thought.
good.
Um, and again, like sort of that spirit of George Lucas being an emergent sort of or a pioneer of emergent sort of film technology. The Mandalorian is such a good example of that because of technology. I don't know if you've heard of the Volume, which is like sort of their um, all of the most of the show is shot on a sound stage with like an LED like screen setup all around them,
Mhm.
and
Yep, I've
they
seen the
go into
videos of
a
that.
game engine. I believe it's like Unreal Engine actually, and they manipulate the landscape around them like on the fly. They can be like, "Can we make that mountain higher?" And someone will have a laptop and they'll
That's
make it higher.
crazy.
And yeah, and it's game changing. Like I believe they also use that technology on the Batman, which just came out for some of the like rooftop scenes,
Hmm.
because of COVID happening and they had to shoot some stuff like remotely or couldn't shoot out in
Mhm.
public, so they resorted to that. And Greg Fraser, who's the director of photography on Mandalorian, was also the director of photography on Batman. So he's
Oh.
like, let me bring this over. So right there, you see this technology, this revolutionary technology proliferating around the film industry, and that just again, like, it just goes to show what they're doing there is like revitalizing sort of the spirit of like what George Lucas brought to Star Wars. So I think that answers the question.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, seeing
Yeah.
I'm remembering like the video I saw now because they did like a whole thing about it
Yes.
from the first season of The Mandalorian, I think, or
Yeah. Yep.
and yeah, that mixing the tech between like industries and everything is something that when you kind of think about it makes sense. Like when it comes to like game design, like game engines and everything, it's like
Oh yeah.
and with how crazy displays and everything are getting now, you can
Absolutely.
it's just insanity. Um so and your point about like the Clone Wars kind of being this blueprint is
Hmm.
really interesting to me because I recently when I rewatched Rebels a few months back. I think I rewatched everything but the first season because I've seen the first season like 3 times at this point.
Sure.
And it's
Yeah.
if and like all things considered, it's probably out of all of it, first season's like the most meh. I would say I
Oh yeah. No,
love
I would agree. It's the weakest.
yeah
Yeah.
I
I
love
know some people who
Rebels.
would vehemently disagree with me, but I
Yeah.
share your opinion.
Uh, and after watching that, I then went back through and watched the Clone Wars, which I was surprised how
Hmm.
much I remembered from like my childhood because I remembered
Yeah.
watching it. I didn't realize how much of it I watched though. I watched a lot of it, I guess, and
Oh yeah.
you can clearly see like the beats that they took from that show, and you like the like when it comes to just I don't even know how to properly explain it, but if you
Hmm.
watch when you watch Rebels, like some aspects you can tell have just even been like kind of smoothed out, and that's why I think towards
Yeah.
the first season I feel like had the kind of bumpiness of a production that just switched hands.
Hmm.
Um and then as you go on, you can just see how smooth everything gets, both story wise, animation wise, everything. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and it's a really I it just makes me whenever I see the opinion I'll see like the video of George Lucas saying it was something he said in like 2019 or something where he's like Star Wars is kind of it's not my same scope or whatever it may have been like
Hmm.
essentially or and
Yeah.
I just think like and then I just see people in the comments of those things being like Star Wars has been bad since Disney bought it just all this like just
Yeah.
really bad like nuclear bunker kind of opinions and it's just like I can't think of like someone seeing the there's just so much good Star Wars content that has come out post that, and there was also good content before that, but also, questionable things before that. So it just seems so, you know, um, gatekeepy,
It hasn't really
obviously.
changed that. Yeah, I'd say it hasn't really. The only difference between that I've always felt between like Lucasfilm now and Lucasfilm pre Disney, at least growing up, um, is that there's just more stuff being made now,
Hmm.
and maybe you could say it feels slightly more corporate. I'd definitely point to a few instances of that in sort of Disney's tenure, but
Yeah.
there were moments of that for Lucasfilm as well, and ultimately, like the most important thing is a lot of the people who were at Lucasfilm before the Disney acquisition are still there.
Hmm.
And in fact, most of the ones that were there are the ones leading the company. Like Doug Chang, who is like basically the art director for the prequel trilogy, is the vice president of Lucasfilm now. Not many people know that, but
Hmm.
and he is like extremely involved and with the like vision of the sequel trilogy, the all the Star Wars shows, like that's all in his vicinity. And then of course, like the sort of most obvious example being Dave Filoni, who's
Yeah.
now you know like essentially like George Lucas's like sort of apprentice, is now the executive creative director at Lucasfilm. So like there's always you can always argue for like corporate meddling or corporate intervention here and there, and having an agenda or whatever, like you said, nuclear bunker type of stuff. But ultimately, like I would encourage people and dare people to look as deep as they can, because um like I personally feel, and you might feel the same way, like there is like depth to these stories because they're actually being told by storytellers ultimately.
Hmm. And your point about like how Lucasfilms may have changed hands and all this stuff, but the people who were there before that are still there, and like that's something I
Yeah.
feel like people really just don't understand. They thought the
Yeah.
purchase meant like everyone got scrapped. It's a whole new team or something. It's like no. And I bought the it's called like well, it's just called Knights of the Old Republic. It's a little like mini book full of like interviews where this
Hmm.
game journalist kind of goes through the production and the process of creating KOTOR from like the initial talks at BioWare all the way through release. And he
Yeah.
tells the story by he interviews BioWare employees, LucasArts employees, voice actors, everybody. And it's
Yeah.
really interesting to get like that kind of view into how LucasArts, like back then especially, the way George Lucas nit nitpicked a lot of like very specific things when it came to presentation. And I
For sure.
mean, there's definitely still, I think there is still some of that because they're trying to keep some amount of continuity and like specific detail. But
Yeah.
I think lessening that like tyrannic grip, or that might be a little bit too harsh of a way of putting it, but lessening that grip of the overwhelming George Lucas vision, I think allowed a lot of good projects to come out that may never have seen the light of day.
Yeah. I mean, like it is kind of interesting, looking at sort of um like sort of you look at it was the expanded universe, most people know it now as like Legends sort of material, like all the books,
Hmm.
comics, video games, any sort of multimedia from um like the Lucas era of Star Wars. And you had a lot of like creative freedom in some areas, but there's also like an interesting sort of trade-off now where a lot of things are connected through canon now,
Hmm.
um which in some cases seems like a hindrance, but it's allowed for like these cool narrative payoffs, like I would argue in The Mandalorian, where people are like, oh, it's cameo of the week, but also it's like, bro, that's Cobb Vanth. That's from like Star Wars Aftermath. Like such a cool character. Now he's
Yeah.
in live action, which is so cool. And you never would have gotten that like in the previous sort of era because it was never that like organized.
Hmm.
Um, so it's been a good thing. It's been a good progression, and I'm sure people are aware of those qualities. It's just like there's some things that people really are very determined to see like give me Darth Vader killing more people in a hallway and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's
Yeah.
like a story has to be told first, and that's
Yeah.
like the bottom line.
You got to make the hallway have meaning, sort of thing.
Exactly, yeah.
It reminds me of the it's like a I think it's just like I can't think of the term right now, but I know in one of your videos you talk about like the ticking bomb, or it's like if no
Yes,
one
the
sees the bomb,
yeah, the
that
Alfred Hitchcock sort of bomb theory. It's like if someone sees a bomb under a table, um boy, even I'm not. I learned that in college.
yeah.
It's such a good thing, though. Basically, it's like the audience knows something is going to happen before the characters do,
Hmm.
which creates suspense. Because it's like, it's the
Yeah,
classic thing of like
it's like, oh my god, like
he's right behind you.
yeah,
That thing. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Uh, but I so on the I'm gonna just move the topic a little bit to
for sure.
so how like I know you were on the Old Republic podcast, so like you and I think you mentioned that you have played KOTOR and you like KOTOR. I guess
Yes.
how I hate being weird about this, but I'm like how much do you like KOTOR? This is such a weird question because
No, it's yeah,
I feel like a dweeb because I also have like
it's fine.
my Revan mask up here.
I think that's dope. That's awesome.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
it's like, but it's because when it comes to Star Wars, I would
Yes.
say my Star Wars is definitely like the first two Knights of the Old Republic games because
Oh yeah.
I had like I was old enough where I missed out on the first prequel movie, and then like the next
Hmm.
two I was fully on board. But
Yeah.
I just remember like I don't know if it was at like Walmart or like a random like used game store even, but we just like happened upon like a physical copy of KOTOR for PC. And it was
Oh
like
yeah.
first PC game we ever played. Well, not first, but like the first single player I think RPG we played on our computer. And it was
Hmm.
definitely like it was right at the age where I think I could actually process like complex narrative like in any
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
reasonable capacity. So it was like and just it was there's a lot of other kind of perfect happenstance things I think that
Oh yeah.
influence that. But it's definitely just this thing that I have, I go back and I play through the games like once a year at this point. Um,
Yeah.
and I I tried to form this into a question, and in my notes I just have general KOTOR question. I'm like, why didn't I write something? I obviously had no way of phrasing this properly, but
I mean, I will never I'll never bemoan any amount of KOTOR appreciation. So you're good.
oh,
Um
perfect.
yeah, and I love those games. Like KOTOR 2 especially just I think
Yep.
KOTOR 1's the better game, but like KOTOR 2 is just insane. Like where it goes with its storytelling, and I'd say like not that it probably was not an inspiration for like I'd say like The Last Jedi, but you can see a lot of similarities between the two stories in a way.
Hmm.
Um, so it's a very relevant like story for Star Wars still. Um, but yeah, no, I'm a big fan of those games. I played them, because Mass Effect is also Bioware, and
Hmm.
Mass Effect was sort of, um, you know, as I explained in that Old Republic podcast episode, was like them making KOTOR, but not KOTOR. They
Yep.
moved on from it, and so I got into Mass Effect after KOTOR, but I've probably played more Mass Effect, and
Hmm.
maybe that's just because like for me it's like more modern feeling. But
Yeah.
even still, like I love KOTOR. I'd say it's probably one of my favorite games ever. I haven't played it probably nearly as many times as you have, but
Yeah. I'm a bit
um,
of a just crazy person with the game, honestly.
No,
uh
listen, I've played like The Witcher 3 like probably 5 times, um, almost 100%ing it each time. So it's
oh
like,
gosh, yeah, that's a
yeah,
that's a commitment. Holy crap.
yeah, exactly.
No, but I completely
Yeah,
understand that feeling of just like it's and like with these kinds of games, it's like I you just genuinely find new things almost every single time. Like
yeah,
it's with
absolutely.
how deep like and the Witcher series, not like maybe earlier on you could kind of compare them, especially because The Witcher uses like a bastardized version of the
Yes,
engine. uh,
yeah,
but it's they definitely had the same sort of beginnings, and the they both just attempt to tell these like not over the top, but just these very deep narratives, and
yes,
they want you to fall in love with the world because they want you to give you all of this world to enjoy.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like KOTOR's always felt like a alternate sort of Star Wars fantasy, where like, I mean, and that's almost very literally what it is now, because I'm sure it's like non-canon, and it'd be hard to make it canon because of sort
Yeah.
of like stuff that is going into the canon now. Um, but you know, like it's like a perfect sort of alternate Star Wars space where you are encountering like the same sort of Star Wars journey that you know from like the original films, but everything is slightly different, and it's been sort of retrofitted for like a gameplay experience, for like a role playing
Hmm.
experience. And so, and also like it's kind of revolutionary for its time, you know, like I in my Mass Effect videos right now, a big point I'm making is the idea of like this is like a truly fully fledged cinematic RPG, and that's a game changing for the RPG genre, because it's like, you know, the RPG genre is born from like the pen and paper game, and every sort of iteration of the PC RPG since then has been trying to take the experience that a pen and paper player has, like a D&D player, if you will, Dungeons and Dragons,
Hmm.
um, that they have in their head, and has been trying to turn that into the game. Well, while Mass Effect, I feel like, was the most successful like effort they had up to that point, they
Hmm.
were trying to do that with KOTOR. They were trying to like be like, let's have the shot reverse shot camera angles, the screen comes down so it's more cinematic. Let's
Hmm.
have like this wonderful score going in the background,
Oh yeah.
fully voiced characters and dialogue. All of that was like super crazy like for an RPG at the time. So it's you know, I mean, I'm sure it's really hard for people who are getting into video games now to get into it, because you know, you play a game like Uncharted 4, God of War, Horizon Forbidden West, and then your friend tells you, "Oh, play KOTOR," and they sit down, they're like, "What is this? Like
What
this
is
is
this?
like
What are these
this is like
block
Pong,
people?
bro."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
Well,
it's
so it's really good that it's getting remade for that reason, of course. But
oh yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And it's interesting because Star Wars, like, it's I find it really funny what they like to selectively take from KOTOR to canonize, like
yeah,
specific, like they might take a name of a planet, or they might take just something random, or I think like there's been like just a few like character names even. um
I know HK droids were in the Mandalorian. They had like, it was like HK-77 or something like that, and I was like, whoa, that's crazy. Like, but
yeah.
yeah, no, it's trickled here and there. It's really interesting.
And like you said, when it comes to like I'm pretty sure like in there when Disney bought everything like a few years into it, that like they did straight up like say like all of this is not canon.
Yeah,
And KOTOR was a part of like that sort of blanket. And
yeah,
it's interesting to because I've also, with this sort of research I've been doing, it's like because KOTOR pulls a lot of its world from the oh gosh, why can't I think of it right now? It's like it's a specific Jedi comic book from like the early 90s. And
it's
they
not Tales of the Jedi, is
it
it?
is Tales of the Jedi. I couldn't
Okay,
think of
there
it
you
for
go.
some
Yeah,
reason. Yeah.
that's fine.
And the story from Tales of the Jedi I find really interesting because it I almost say it kind of perfectly sets up this kind of, because KOTOR, I think would have been a very different game if the prequel movies didn't influence it as much as it did.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of aspects, and while towards the end of that comic book series, they definitely hint at this sort of progression that would lead to KOTOR slash like the kind of Jedi society that we see in the prequel movies.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
And it's just, and the work that was done to because the essentially like the pitch that happened for that to become like the backdrop for the games is interesting, and like it's interesting to see truly how involved LucasArts was in that game's development.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
Like it was a hand in hand effort from like, first conversations to release day, like with stuff. And
Hmm.
um it's I'm excited to see the, like, I mean there's a lot of like, I feel like KOTOR gatekeepers who are like, don't remake the game, you're gonna ruin it, blah blah blah. It's like, the game, if you want a modern audience to truly experience it, like I have a friend who really didn't get into gaming until like 2 years ago, and you try to make her play anything that's not like semi modern, and it, like, just the graphics alone, she's like, this gives me a headache. And it's like,
Yeah.
you kind of realize like there
Why
is
can't
that
I look
disconnect.
up ever?
Yeah. Why is the camera so stiff? Why is like X, Y,
Yeah,
and Z?
yeah.
Why I hey, why is this, and like this character not dying? Because I had that in my last KOTOR playthrough. There's an on the Sith planet, one of the acolytes that you can essentially betray, like
Hmm.
or double cross, I guess would be the better term. There's a
Yeah.
bug that can happen randomly where they're just invincible.
Oh yeah.
I love that shit.
Yeah. KOTOR is really buggy. Like, God, there's a pretty infamous glitch I think my friend had where it's like anytime he'd switch back to his like main character after combat, they'd be stuck in place, could not move forward. And he'd
Oh
have to
yeah,
do like a quick save and then reload the save and then he could move it. And it was like, man, that's like,
that's a VSync
yeah.
problem. Like I
Aha.
ran into that
You've
specifically.
been
It's like
down that road.
it's
Yeah.
VSync or something. Yeah. Oh god.
Hmm.
Um
Interesting.
there's a lot of random, but you have to play the games with mods nowadays, especially because like playing on a modern
Oh
platform
yeah.
introduced even more problems. Like you can go back and play it on
Yeah,
XP machine if you feel
absolutely.
like it. But
Yeah.
it's interesting to say like KOTOR was a mess, but KOTOR 2 was like an absolute trailer trash disaster on release. And
Yep.
if which is why, I think the only version you can get on Steam is like a modified version now. Um,
Oh yeah, the restored content
yeah,
mod or whatever. Yeah.
or
Yeah, and even then, like it's pretty remarkable, like just how like much it adds to the game, but also like
oh yeah,
towards the end, you can definitely be like something's missing here.
oh yeah, you have a bunch of half done things that were from
Yeah.
there was so much left over in KOTOR 2, where in like KOTOR 1 there was cut content, but not quite as much. So it's like you play
Yeah.
one or the other. It's like you played KOTOR 1 all the way through, with cut content and without. It's a negligible difference in experience, where KOTOR 2 is a
Yeah.
different game when you're playing it through with the content mod. Like
Yeah, it's almost like playing a director's cut, very
yeah,
strangely. Like
it is
yeah.
insanity. I
Yeah.
If I ever do like a KOTOR 2 video, I plan to try to play through the like base game again. And
Mhm.
because I also have like, I have my first playthrough of that game was on Xbox, and that I'm pretty sure was even worse than the PC version. I remember it
Yeah.
being pretty damn bad, but um,
Oh yeah.
it's yeah. I'm very excited at the concept of a KOTOR remake, because that means concept of a KOTOR 2 remake, which is like just have
Ooh.
telling that story in like a proper way. Sounds so, especially if it would mean we would get a true like KOTOR 3 game with, and not the, I love, so I felt
Don't get me too excited.
I fell into the Old Republic a few months ago, like, and I played a shit ton of it
The
because
MMO.
yeah,
I love that game. Yeah,
It's
I've been playing it since
amazing.
launch.
I played
So
it
much
at
content.
launch. I played it at launch, and
Oh
I
yeah, okay.
could not.
Hmm.
It was so fucking. It felt terrible.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I fell into it. I'm like, I think I am. I was max level before the new update, which I've heard mixed things about. But like, I was
Yeah, it's
like,
not the greatest.
I'm almost done with like the oh god, I'm so bad at remembering anything. Like I when it comes to
What
like
planet
character
were you on?
names.
I can tell you.
Oh jeez. It was well, it's not the expansion before the new one. It's like the one before that. It's with the two brothers. I
Oh, so you're either doing Fallen Empire or Eternal Throne.
I think I just started Eternal Throne. Like
Okay. Yeah, it
I
starts in like
loved
Voss and yeah.
I loved Fallen Empire. Like that was
Oh yeah.
the base game of that is like okay, I think.
Hmm.
And then you hit the expansions, and the expansions are like a just leg up in every freaking way possible. Um,
Hmm.
and there's a lot like even with an MMO, they put in just so much voice acting in everything, and
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
truly like the experience is like paramount. But what I don't
Absolutely.
like is what they have done to specific characters from KOTOR. Like I know
Yeah.
there's parts with Revan
Oof.
like further on, I think. Um
A little bit. Yeah.
yeah, there's a little bit of Revan stuff. I just still can't stand how badly the exile is just completely like axed out of like the story, and like how they
Yeah.
you could tell BioWare didn't intend for the exile to mean as much as I think KOTOR players did. Um,
Well, yeah, and a little bit of that, I guess, is in fault part to like sort of KOTOR 2 wasn't technically their game. That was
yeah, Obsidian,
Obsidian.
yeah, and
And
Obsidian
it's still part
Crafts.
of like the KOTOR world. It's just like for them, it's not like it wasn't part of their authorship, and so I assume like their intentions for it are not as sacred as it maybe were to Obsidian.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, and it's just something I've like because Drew, what is his last name?
Drew
It's hard,
Karpyshyn.
Karpyshyn. It's
Yep.
I love the direction and like writing and everything that they did for the first game. I love
Hmm.
Obsidian. I think just took it to this like level of like making you think more about the universe that Star Wars is, and like deconstructing it. And then
Yeah.
he
Absolutely.
kind of took that concept and then like threw it as hard as he could in the trash. Um,
Oh man.
like
Yeah.
it's just like he's still I think there's still at least a little like little beats of it and everything in the story of the
Sure.
Old Republic, but
Yeah.
the focus like and you can't I don't think you can tell a story like that in an MMO form properly. Um
No. Yeah.
but it just feels like and it just the way they describe like the I guess the everything that happened post 2 just feels awkward. They were just kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
filling space.
It's very much like an effort of like um they'll reference things that happened in post KOTOR 2, which KOTOR 2 does set up like some crazy stuff for what would have been a KOTOR 3, but in Old Republic a lot of it is oh yeah, that stuff. Yeah, it happened. There was no big
Yeah,
deal. It happened.
we only talked about the
And
death of the Force, like it's just all this stuff.
yeah,
It's like it's completely gone.
yeah, and yeah, I think ultimately like Old Republic probably does like the best it probably could have with that, like because it's not trying to be KOTOR 3. It's trying to. I always say like it's trying to be KOTOR 4, 5, and 6. Like
Hmm.
it's a new trilogy of stories ultimately, and then some. Because it's still being told.
Hmm.
Um, but that doesn't change the fact like a KOTOR 3 is out there. I know Drew Karpyshyn did write a Revan novel, which is like sort of the story of what would have been KOTOR 3, but um And it's really interesting because like this is a situation that I think keeps happening to Drew Karpyshyn because a very similar thing happened to him with Mass Effect, where he set up a story. The second person sort of took the story in like a different direction,
Hmm.
and then it came back to him in the third one, which I suppose is also a little bit like the sequel trilogy. But you know, he had at that point had to be like, well, here's what my instincts say as a storyteller. With Mass Effect, it sort of happens a little bit differently, where he was there for like the first half of the series, and then had some intentions for like how it would end, but then different lead writer came in, and then the rest is kind of history with Mass Effect 3.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I have that Revan book on my desk right now because I'm gonna read it at
Oh
some
yeah.
point. And
Hmm.
like I've been just kind of getting as much material as I can around for like this Nice Little Republic video because I feel like there's been
Yeah,
good video essays about it, but not like kind of deconstruction of the process and just the game in general.
I would agree.
Um,
Yeah.
so, but the process of doing that and like trying to put the information in like key places is really hard, as you can probably guess.
Yeah.
Because you have to, I want to reference like the old comic books. I want to reference this book I have about the development. I don't necessarily need to finish his Revan book for that because since it's just the first game, it's contained. Um,
Yeah.
there was the whole KOTOR comic book series, which is
Hmm.
amazing if you've never read it.
I haven't, but I've heard it is amazing.
I think some of like the characters the story that they tell is good, even though it's not. They make sure to keep it contained in some way where it doesn't really affect the continuity of the KOTOR games. It's a safe
Yeah.
story, but it's a good story.
Yeah.
And you get to see just so much like pre-fall kind of information, which I really enjoy. It's like you get to
Yeah.
see the world functioning as it did before the Sith came back essentially. Uh,
Yeah.
and then I also got the old Star Wars tabletop RPG. They made a nice little Republic setting book, and I got that so I could kind of look through statistics and everything. And there's like just little
Yeah.
bits of like added information, which I think is interesting. But
Hmm.
just trying to take, multiple books worth of information and like my own, like interject with my own sort of opinion and everything. I understand why it could take you like a solid amount of time just to write these things. And
For sure.
I think I'm not pre my time frames are much worse because I'm not as refined, but also I think um, you seem to have like a bit more of a background in like in college, like storytelling, or sounds like you did something along the lines of like
Hmm.
with movies and everything.
Yeah.
So it's been like getting over those hurdles of learning new things is like a but once you have a grasp of that new concept, it's much easier to apply,
Oh yeah.
which
Yeah. You
then
take it and you run with
refines.
it as much as you can.
Yeah, exactly. Um, which is just like I think is a very you can I think it's a very common thing amongst a lot of YouTubers where you can tell where they're already comfortable, like in certain aspects, whether it's
Hmm.
sound, editing, subject matter, pacing, whatever it may be. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I you can see like these little good things. It's like I think the one thing I have going for me in this kind of sense is like I just do the tech stuff well, but that doesn't work if what I'm talking about isn't interesting.
Sure. Sure.
But
Well,
oh
I was
sorry.
gonna say like another thing you do have going for you, like again, I'm full of cliches, every time I have these things, but um is that you come from a place where you genuinely love like KOTOR. You genuinely love the topic and care about it. And that will like carry you through a lot of stuff. Like for me, like with the Clone Wars videos, like I mean, like you said, background in film, stuff like that. And that's true. Like I've been editing videos for a long time. I've written scripts, done short film stuff like that. So, I had like a way in that sense, but ultimately like nothing like helped me more than like having just like a genuine passion and love for the thing I was talking about, because that sort of illuminated like what the video needed to be or what the videos needed to be. So like that's one of your big strengths, frankly, going into that KOTOR video.
Hmm. And yeah, because and going off of like from watching your like I've watched those Star your Clone Wars videos probably multiple times, and I've watched your Rebels videos specifically probably 3 times because
Well, thank you.
so and like Rebels is just this kind of thing where I have like a very kind of soft spot for it because I watched it like I don't know if it was like week to week when it came out, but like I kept up with it for a good amount of time. I didn't watch it
Yeah,
all the way through because I think it also had like not a hiatus, but like a little bit of like a gap between one of the seasons. I can't
there were
remember.
gaps. Yeah.
But I just remember at one point like falling out of it after like 1 or 2 seasons.
Hmm.
Um, and I, but when I came back to it, I don't know, just I appreciated a lot of what that show did. Um,
Oh yeah.
and the story it told. And then when I went back and watched the Clone Wars, it's like, oh, so that's where a lot of this came from. And when I watch things like The Mandalorian, it's like obviously it's different because it's live action, but you can
Of
still
course.
feel that same sort of. There's just a love for the source material in a lot of the stuff, and
Oh yeah. Hmm.
it also but it's not afraid to try new things. And I'm especially with the Mandalorian. I love the Mandalorian concept of
Hmm.
just how they operate their society and everything, and
Yeah.
it's really and like it's I just like it a lot that a lot of that was born like at least came from the comics originally and just expanded into this crazy
Oh yeah.
sub part of the universe.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and KOTOR also like a big part of that. Like Mandalorians are so integral to that story.
Hmm.
Um, and when they did Mandalorians and the Clone Wars, like at that point it was sort of George Lucas being like, "All right, here's what actually happened."
Hmm.
But
Yeah,
a
hands
lot
on
of that
table.
was, yeah, yeah, a lot of that was built off of like the work that like all these creators in the comics and like the games had done for years with Mandalorians.
Hmm.
Um, so it's sort of been like, yeah, it's been like a continuing sort of thing of, like you said, a love for the source material.
Hmm. And like that when we talk about kind of these side projects to the movies, I think that's why I enjoy it's like maybe when I was younger I had in my head I was like, the movies are what matter. But as I've
Yeah.
gotten older, it's like you just appreciate the TV shows and what they do for the overarching story. Um
Oh yeah.
and you just really appreciate the kind of I don't know where that thought was going really, but it's just the you could just get so much more of the world out of those things. And like KOTOR was just
Absolutely.
like this sort of moment where you just realize like, oh, Star Wars is like, space cowboys, but like it's like cool space cowboys. Like,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And so much more. Yeah. It's great.
yeah. But I won't keep you too long. I think we've been talking for a while now. But where can people find you?
You can find me first and foremost on YouTube as ArTorr. I'm sure my name is in the title here somewhere. I won't spell it out. But yeah, of course, I upload all kinds of videos, video essays on video games, movie stuff, obviously Star Wars. So stay tuned for a lot more of that. You can also follow me on Twitter at Parks Harmon. I tweet on the daily. I don't really post pictures there ever, but I will eventually maybe follow me on Instagram as Parks Harmon as well. And then on Twitch, twitch.tv/Sator. Just replace the AR with SAI and you'll find me. I have not been streaming super regularly, though. There's a good chance I might get back to that when Lego Skywalker Saga comes out in a week
Ooh.
or so. Or yeah, so
Oh,
You probably
damn.
noticed on Discord I had the Lego Bosk profile
Yeah, I
picture.
saw that.
Yeah. It's fun. It's a fun little sort of cultural phenomenon the Lego Star Wars games are. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, that's where you can find me.
I now like that. Like, I wish I had a question about that because that was like another big thing. I think probably from both of our childhoods, like of playing the
Oh,
Lego
for
Star
sure.
Wars games because
Yeah.
it was just such a good co-op experience. Like, if you had siblings or anything or just friends, even like I played
Oh yeah.
me and my brother played through just every Lego Star Wars game released. But
Oh yeah. Friendships were broken on the Mustafar duel level. Yeah,
Oh,
infamous for
oh
that.
god, and that just reminded me of the not terrible, but like good kind of bad episode 3 game.
So
Um
bad it's good.
yeah,
Yeah.
so bad it's good. Or did you okay, this will be the last bit. Did you ever play
Okay.
the Phantom Menace PlayStation 1 game?
I did not, but I watched a friend of mine play through the entire emulator, and boy, it's rough, but man, it's so good.
Yeah, me and my brother beat that game like 2 or 3 times on co-op when we were
Oh
younger.
man.
I think we played that before we saw the first movie.
Oh yeah.
Just yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah, it was great talking to you.
Sure. Thank you for having me on.
Of course.